My father was treated like a ghost in his own family for decades. When I finally learned the dark secret behind their hatred, it broke me in ways I'll never fully heal from. I used to think my father was simply a quiet man, reserved, withdrawn, a shadow who moved through our house, fixing things that broke, paying bills, keeping the roof over our heads. When I was a kid, I didn't think too deeply about it. Some fathers yelled, some fathers joked, some fathers told stories. Mine sat at the dinner table with his shoulders slightly hunched, chewing slowly, eyes fixed on his plate while the rest of the family's conversation swirled around him as if he wasn't even there. I remember being young and trying to catch his eye just to make him smile, and sometimes he did. A small curve of his lips, a fleeting expression. But more often, he would look away, or someone else would speak over him before he could answer my questions. My mother was the loud one. She filled every silence with commentary or complaints. My older brother, Sean, was athletic and brash, always commanding attention, and my sister, Emily, was sharp-tongued and dramatic. I grew up watching how easily they dismissed my father. If he made a suggestion, Mom brushed it aside. If he tried to tell a story, Sean interrupted. Emily rolled her eyes, and Mom would change the subject. I never saw them thank him for anything. Mowing the lawn, repairing the car, working late so bills got paid. He was like wallpaper in our family home, present but unnoticed. At first, I assumed that's just how families were. Every family has roles, right? The loud one, the funny one, the serious one. Maybe Dad was just the background one. But the older I got, the more it began to feel wrong. When I was about 12, I remember one Thanksgiving dinner. We had my grandparents over, along with my aunt and uncle. Everyone was laughing, drinking wine, telling stories. My father sat quietly at the end of the table. At some point, he cleared his throat and tried to chime in something about how his coworker had once burned a turkey in the office kitchen. Nobody listened. My uncle cut him off with a hunting story. The laughter rose again, swallowing my father's words like waves swallowing a pebble. I glanced at Dad, and for a split second, I saw his face frozen mid-sentence, lips half formed around a word that would never be heard. He closed his mouth, dropped his eyes, and went back to pushing food around his plate. That image burned into me. From then on, I started watching more closely. At birthdays, Dad was the one setting up chairs while everyone else joked. At Christmas, he was outside stringing lights while the rest of us warmed ourselves by the fire. He was always doing the quiet work, never acknowledged. When he spoke, the room moved on without him. By the time I was 17, I started resenting my mother and siblings for the way they treated him. But every time I tried to speak up, they dismissed me too. He doesn't mind, my mom said once. That's just how he is. He's not a talker, but I wasn't so sure. After high school, I moved out, but I visited often. Each time, I noticed Dad getting quieter, almost fading. His hair grayed, his shoulders slumped further, and his silences grew heavier. I asked him once, "Dad, are you happy?" He gave me that small, fleeting smile, the same one from my childhood, and said, "Of course, why wouldn't I be?" But his eyes looked tired, and I didn't believe him. It wasn't until I was 26, after Dad's funeral, that I discovered the truth. He died of a heart attack one October morning. He'd been working in the garage, fixing a leaking pipe. Mom found him slumped over, tools scattered. The funeral was quick. My mother gave a short speech. My siblings shared vague stories. But nobody cried the way I thought they should. Nobody seemed broken, except me. I couldn't stop crying, not just because he was gone, but because I felt like I had lost him twice, once when the family erased him in life, and now when death made it final. After the funeral, Mom handed me a small cardboard box. This was his, she said. I don't want it cluttering the house. Inside were journals, letters, and folders. She gave it to me as though it was junk mail. I took it home, set it on my desk, and for days I didn't touch it. I was afraid of what I might find. But one night, when the grief was too heavy to sleep, I opened the box. That's when I learned who my father really was. The journals stretched back to before I was born. His handwriting was neat but tight, like he was trying to contain too much into little space. The first entries were about work, long hours, fixing things at home. But then came the words that made my stomach twist. They don't see me. I try, but it's like I'm not here. Even my own family looks through me. Entry after entry repeated the same heartbreak. Attempts to connect with my mother, attempts to bond with Sean and Emily, attempts to speak at gatherings all ignored, ridiculed, brushed aside. But worse than that, I found something else. A folder full of letters. All addressed, none sent. Letters to my grandparents, to his brother, to my mother. In them, he begged for recognition. He wrote things like, "I don't know what I did to deserve being treated this way. I work, I provide, I try to love, but I am invisible." Another, "Please stop telling the kids I'm useless. They believe you. I can see it in their eyes." Another, "Sometimes I wonder if I was meant to be part of this family at all." And then, buried at the bottom, a letter addressed to me. My hands shook as I unfolded it. It began simply, "To my son." He wrote that he had noticed how I looked at him differently. How I sometimes tried to listen when nobody else did. "I want you to know that none of this was your fault. If I seemed small, it was because I was made small by those around me. But you gave me light. Every time you smiled at me. Every time you asked me a question and waited for the answer, you reminded me I wasn't invisible." By the time I finished reading, my tears had soaked the page. But that wasn't all. In the back of the box was a sealed envelope labeled "Truth." Inside were documents, birth certificates, old letters, and newspaper clippings. That's when I discovered the secret that explained everything. My father had been illegitimate. Born out of an affair, raised reluctantly by grandparents who never truly accepted him. He grew up carrying shame that wasn't his. His siblings treated him as the black sheep, the mistake. When he married my mother, he thought he had finally built his own family, his own safe place. But somehow, that cycle of rejection followed him. My mother's family picked up where his left off, treating him as less than. And she, whether out of cruelty, habit, or indifference, joined them. My entire childhood had been built on watching a man quietly endure a lifetime of being unwanted. And yet, in those journals, in those letters, there was love. Every page mentioned me. He wrote about my baseball games, my drawings, my questions. He said I gave him purpose, that I was the reason he kept trying. My siblings' names appeared too, but without the same warmth. With them, it was mostly hurt, their mockery, their dismissal. With me, it was hope. Reading his words shattered me. For so long I thought he had been passive, maybe even content in his quietness. But no, he had been screaming silently into notebooks, begging for someone to see him. And I did see him. But not enough, not soon enough. After that night, I couldn't look at my family the same way. My mother, my siblings, my relatives, they had built a wall around him and left him in the shadows. And now he was gone, and they would never know what they had done. Sometimes I think about confronting them, showing them the journals, reading his words aloud so they could finally hear the man they ignored for decades. But then I hear his voice. In my head, the quiet, steady tone, and I know he wouldn't want me to. He endured it so I wouldn't have to. So instead, I keep his box close. I read his words when I feel invisible myself, and I remind myself every day that I carry his story forward, because my father was not nothing. He was not invisible. He was a man who bore the weight of silence so that his son could learn to speak. And now, through me, he will never be forgotten. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this.